They always told me I was lucky to live under their roof, that I should be grateful they took me in after my dad died when I was 9, that without them I would be on the streets or worse, and every time I tried to speak or defend myself my voice got drowned by Greg's constant reminders that I wasn't really family, that I was just the extra baggage that came with marrying a widow and 2 daughters of his own to care for. I was a burden he tolerated, not a son he embraced. My mom tried to soften it at first, said he had a hard time showing affection, that he needed time, but time passed and things only got worse. I remember the first Christmas in that house when all the presents under the tree had names on them but none for me, and when I asked, Greg said I should be thankful for the roof and the food because those cost more than anything he could wrap. I went to my room in the basement that night, tried not to cry because I didn't want them to hear me. My room wasn't even finished: concrete floors, exposed pipes, a leaky window in the corner, while his daughters had polished hardwood and LED ceiling lights and fairy string lamps. I taped a poster on the wall of a city skyline, told myself one day I'd design better buildings, better homes with space for people like me, invisible kids who grew up in someone else's shadow. Greg liked to introduce me to his friends as, "This is my wife's son," then move on like I was some side note in his perfect picture family. He'd joke that I was eating too much or sleeping too late or using too much electricity, and every time I got an award in school he'd say, "Well, that's nice, but grades don't mean you belong." I tried to disappear, studied late into the night with a flashlight, read architecture books from the library, watched YouTube videos on home design and sustainability, while his daughters hosted pool parties and broke curfew with no consequences. One night when I was 15, Greg came home drunk after a poker game and told my mom she was lucky he hadn't kicked us out yet, said we were just guests in a life he built and guests should know their place. She cried at the kitchen table. I sat at the stairs and listened, my hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my skin. That was the night I promised myself that I would leave not just the house but everything that came with it, the pity, the control, the fake smiles. I got a job the next week hauling lumber at a construction site, saved every dollar, told my boss I'd take extra shifts if he needed. When I turned 16 I paid for my own laptop, started learning 3D modeling, CAD drafting, thermal flow analysis, anything that could get me closer to building the future I wanted. By the time I graduated high school I had a portfolio better than most college students. I applied to 10 schools, got accepted to 8 and chose UCLA because it had the best design program and was far enough from Greg's house to feel like another planet. The day I left I packed my bags quietly. Greg stood at the door and said, "Don't forget who fed you all these years." I said, "I won't forget, I just won't." "Thank you." He laughed like I was a joke. Emily filmed it on her phone, probably posted it with some dumb caption like, "Finally free of the basement troll." I didn't care, I was done. I moved into a tiny dorm with cracked walls and shared bathrooms, but it was mine, and for the first time in years I slept peacefully. College was hard, but not harder than what I had already survived. I woke up early, went to class, took notes, worked a night shift at a campus bookstore, and designed freelance logos and digital layouts on weekends just to afford books and keep my laptop from dying. I didn't party, I didn't waste time. I poured every ounce of myself into my dream, and my dream was clear. I wanted to build homes for kids who grew up like me, unwanted, underestimated, and overlooked. I spent hours studying how architecture affects emotions, how light and space could heal or hurt, how ceilings too low could make a child feel small, how windows placed wrong could erase hope. I started sketching blueprints not for rich clients but for single parents, for foster kids, for displaced families. I wanted to reimagine what a safe home could be. I joined a student group that focused on sustainable urban housing, got invited to national competitions, flew to New York once with a borrowed suit and won third place in a challenge to design a livable shelter for disaster zones. My professors started noticing, they told me I had something rare, clarity. I graduated top of my class with offers from 5 different firms and took the smallest one because they gave me the most creative control. My first apartment was a shoebox, but it had a view of the city and a door that only I had the key to. I stayed up late drawing, designing, writing grants, building a name for myself. Brick by metaphorical brick. I called my mom once a week. She always sounded tired but proud. She never mentioned Greg again. When I was 25 I co-founded a design firm with 2 other visionaries. We didn't have money but we had purpose, and it showed. Within 4 years we were on magazine covers, getting contracts from 3 cities and turning vacant buildings into safe havens. Then one night I was scrolling through listings for fun and saw at Greg's house, the same house I'd grown up in, listed under foreclosure auctions. There was a single blurry photo of the backyard pool still murky with algae and an outdated kitchen still covered in beige and brass. I clicked the link, called the agent, verified it 3 times before believing it was real. Greg had gone bankrupt. The agent said over-leveraged every property, fell for some crypto scam, then defaulted on his loans. His second wife left him, his daughters cut him off, and now he was living in a trailer in Bakersfield. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling thinking about the basement floor where I used to cry myself to sleep, the cracked window that leaked every winter, the birthdays no one remembered, the years of being less than. I called the bank first thing in the morning, told them I wanted the house and that I'd pay cash above asking. I signed the paperwork 2 days later, walked through that front door as the owner and felt a silence I'd never known there before. Not empty, not sad, just clean, free. I stood in the middle of the living room and whispered, I'm home, not to anyone else, just to the house, to the air, to myself. I didn't rush the renovation. I wanted to feel every step of reclaiming it, not just to erase what had been, but to rewrite what could be. I started with the basement, my old room, stripped it down to concrete and pipes, then rebuilt it from the ground up, soundproofed the walls, insulated the floors, put in soft lighting and a full bookshelf wall, painted the ceiling a deep calming blue, the same shade I used to stare at in architecture catalogs when I needed to feel safe. I turned it into my office, filled it with models and blueprints, and a large framed drawing of my first winning design. Above the desk I hung a quote in steel letters, we build to belong. Upstairs I gutted the kitchen, opened the walls, added skylights, polished every corner until the beige was gone, replaced with clean lines and warm woods. I kept the pool but resurfaced it, added solar lights and a garden around the edges. My friends came by often. They marveled at the change, not just in the house but in me. You seem lighter, one of them said, like you finally set something down. And maybe I had, maybe it was the weight of proving myself, or the echo of a voice that always said I'd never be enough. One afternoon while I was sketching on the patio, my phone rang. It was Greg. I didn't recognize the number at first, but when I answered, his voice was unmistakable, older, raspier, but still sharp. He said he knew I bought the house, asked if I would consider selling it back, said it had sentimental value and that he was willing to make a fair offer. I paused for a moment, then said no and hung up. He tried emailing, then texting, finally sent a letter in the mail begging for a meeting, said he was sick, living in a mobile unit, and that everything had fallen apart. I didn't respond, not out of cruelty but because I had nothing left to say. My life no longer revolved around his recognition or lack thereof. I didn't need closure because I had already closed that chapter. Months passed. I focused on my work, launched a housing initiative in the same neighborhood I grew up in, partnered with the city to build affordable green homes for displaced families, named the community center after my mom, who moved into the guest house behind mine a few weeks later. She brought her plants, her old books, and the same coffee mug she'd used since I was a kid. The first morning in her new home she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack, said, this is the first time I've felt safe in years. I hosted an open house for the neighborhood and people walked through and out. Kids ran in yards, parents asked about loans and layouts. The city councilwoman cried in the living room of one model home, said she grew up in a place just like this and always dreamed of something better. That night I sat on the edge of the pool, feet in the water, the same pool Greg once told me not to touch without permission, but now it was mine. The stars reflected in the surface and I felt peace, not triumph, not revenge, just peace. A few weeks later I got a call from a journalist who wanted to write a feature about the project. I agreed. We met at the office and she asked why I chose this house to be my home again. I told her because I believe in healing, not hiding, because I didn't want to run from my past but grow from it, because there are kids right now sitting in basements being told they don't matter and I want them to know they do. She asked if I had anything to say to the people who once doubted me. I said nothing, just build something better. Her article went viral. People from all over the country wrote letters, shared their stories, said they finally felt seen. Then one day someone knocked on my door. I opened it and there stood Emily. She looked different, older, tired but softer. She said she was sorry, said she didn't know how badly I had been treated, said she remembered the birthday I spent alone in the basement and that she thought about it every year. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Then she handed me a small box. Inside was the old photo of my dad, the one I thought I lost when we moved in. She said she found it behind a dresser and kept it. I thanked her and watched her walk away quietly, respectfully, like someone who finally understood what had been broken. I framed that photo, placed it on my office shelf next to the plaque we received for urban housing excellence and the key to the city we were given last winter for revitalizing forgotten neighborhoods. The house was no longer haunted, it was alive with purpose and hope and legacy. And now I turn to you, whoever you are reading this or listening or watching. I ask you something simple but real. Have you ever been made to feel like a guest in your own life? Have you ever carried the weight of someone else's doubt so long that it felt like your own truth? And if so, what will you build from it? Will you let it define you, or will you rise above it brick by brick, thought by thought, until the house you live in finally feels like home again? Let me know your story, because I promise someone out there needs to hear it just like you needed to hear this.